So I just want to do a little disclaimer before we get into today's episode. I'm very aware of the current conversation surrounding celebrating Canada Day on July 1st. I'm in full support of anybody who does not celebrate this year, who wears orange when they go out, or decides to take that time to learn more and, just recognize that we have a dark history here in Canada. I think there's a difference between noticing that we're privileged to live in Canada as its current state right now, but we can't not recognize that was built upon an atrocity and a genocide committed to the Indigenous communities. So Huey will be performing at a show on July 1st. I will be going because, yet again, I think there's also a difference between supporting your friends and celebrating Canada. Anybody that knows me would know that I'm not a fan of nationalism in general, so it's not something that I really do other than just to go party with my friends. But this year I'll be wearing orange. I will be showing up to the show to support my friends, especially because these artists and these friends, as you'll learn in the episode, they use their platform and their voice to raise awareness of some of the atrocities and the struggle that many people all around the world deal with, but specifically the Indigenous population here in Canada. So I just wanted to make that disclaimer. This episode was filmed before the unmarked 751 child graves were found at a residential school in Saskatchewan. So it's clear that the horrible things of our past are still being discovered today. So I'm in full support of anybody that decides not to celebrate this Canada Day. I'm also in support of people that do go out and support local, because as everybody knows, we're coming out of a pandemic, and many of these businesses in our local community do rely upon events like Canada Day to make really good money and pay their employees. So personally, yet again, I will be wearing orange on July 1st, and I will be going to the shows to support my friends. But I will put some links down below in the description here to give some materials for people to read up upon and learn more about some of our history, and as well as a place to donate and support and give some money to the Indigenous communities and some leaders that are doing some amazing things. So check that down below, and hopefully you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the Jordan Powers Experience, episode 3. On this episode, I interview my man Huey Doje. Huey Doje is a singer-songwriter, hip-hop artist here locally in Kelowna, BC. This dude, if I'm being honest, I can't even put him in a box. He is an extremely talented human being, an extremely kind and thoughtful human being, and he's honestly, I was excited to have him on this episode because I wanted to branch out a little bit and talk about some wild ideas, some more in-depth, tough conversations, and I think we did it. But I think this is also a good time to state that first and foremost, this is an entertainment-first podcast. At the end of the day, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physicist, I'm not any of those things, man. I didn't even go to university, so take what we say into consideration. My main goal at the end of the day is to have open, free conversation and just chat, and hopefully you guys gain something from that. So without further ado, let's get a little word from our sponsors, starting with Oakham Cannabis. Oakham Cannabis is a privately owned, family-run craft producer located here in Kelowna, BC. In their facility, they're determined to produce the highest quality of bud in their state-of-the-art RotoGrow rotational gardening system, as well as providing with full-spectrum COT extracted oil, all done in-house with their Apex extraction unit. All growing is done indoors using a hydroponic system to create a clean and controlled growing environment. Oakham has been producing high-quality, high-THC cannabis for almost 2 years. Their controlled environment allows them to produce cannabis that is free of pesticides and molds using their system irradiating, which I don't know if I pronounced that right. I'm really excited for this brand, guys. I love supporting locals, so make sure that you keep an eye out for their products. Smoke them and discover. They're not in licensed cannabis stores yet, but they will be soon, so hit up www.oakhamcannabis.com and check them out. Woo! That
That wasn't that bad, dude. That wasn't that bad. Our second sponsor is Garnish Barware. Garnish Barware are bar tools that are proudly designed and engraved here in Kelowna, BC, and trusted behind some of Canada's busiest cocktail bars. My man Griffin gave me this Jordan Powers Experience flask. He custom engraved himself here in town, and honestly, it's getting a lot of use this summer. So make sure you go to www.garnishbarware.com, check them out, buy your cocktail for yourself, whether you're working behind a bar, making some dope-ass cocktails at home. This is going to be a crazy summer, people, so make sure you get the tools that are going to facilitate that. And without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Huey Doje.
Yeah. Jordan Powers Experience. We experiencing life high life. Hey, hold on. Huey Doje in the building. We in the building. Hey, you in the building. We in the building. Hey, we in the building. We in the building. Hey, yeah. And it's so thrilling, yeah, as my spirit ascends and the words come alive through the spirit of the pen, I'm en route to sage path like a master of Zen. This shit is profound, got to read the chapters again. Deep words from the dragon and the sky master Lao. So you say you know the Tao, then you don't know what it's about. Cause the in and outs of the tower unnamed are unfazed by any words on the page, they masquerade. Yes, as my mind digress from a place to a space of divine time spent, new faces and no names, a bird's eye view, point vantage. I'm riding on the package of the rhyme flexion. Split the circle into two for the straight path through the life of West illusion. Set forth by colonial intrusion, which as a result forms a range of institutions. Hey, who disregard the indigenous and no sacred knowledge about the lands that we live in. It's like we're children with no sense. I can see, hear, and smell, but it makes no sense. Nonsensical. The damage from the hands and the actions of the man, reprehensible demands. This is coming from a man whose ancestral seed path is not Aborigine, but clearly I see past. Like glass, seeing it how it appears, or how my eyes perceive a slight buzzing in my ears. That's in cosmic ways, but there's nothing there to fear as my optics fade and perception disappears. Hey, Huey Doje, hey, we in the building, hey, we in the building. Huey Doje, hey, we in the building, hey, we in the building. Check, so thrilling.
Huey Doje!
Jordan Powers Experience.
Absolutely, bro. Dude, I wasn't sure how long you were going to go on there.
Could have went longer, but sometimes we just gotta cut it short.
Damn, bro, some knowledge in there, some
100%. Deep bars.
That's one thing I've always admired about you, man. Is your lyrics are just beyond like the hype shit and the kind of, let's talk about money and drugs and women. It's like you're actually speaking some knowledge and putting some of your thoughts and
100%.
Yeah,
I feel
philosopher
like 100%. Honestly, I'm a deep reader and still learning and practitioner of Zen philosophy and Eastern philosophy, going back to like Confucius and Confucianism and Lao Tzu with Taoism and like Sun Tzu with the Book of War. It's just deep knowledge, and it's like I feel like there's an untapped category of hip hop which stems from philosophy. Especially in the modern age, like Wu-Tang was deep into that stuff, and like Capital Steez as recent as 2010 was preaching deep knowledge, but nowadays it's kind of lacking,
That's crazy, bro. I want to get into some of that a little bit later, but
100%.
Let's just first of all, welcome to episode 3. This is my man Huey Doje.
Huey Doje, ladies and gentlemen.
Tell me a bit about yourself, man, and tell the people a bit about yourself. And actually, first off, that song that you just performed. Is that off the top? That's
written. I used to freestyle off top of the dome back in the high school days, but I've since focused all my energy on like full, deep, meaningful lyrics and lyricism type thing. So whenever a beat comes on, I always have a couple of verses that just ready to go for when the time needs to happen,
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Man.
And how did this whole musical journey start for you?
This is an ever-evolving story, and it really started with my first true love being football. I played just across the bridge on the west side at Boucherie, and then with the junior bantams, the Sun Devils, and the Ticats and stuff like that. And when I was in the 10th grade, which was a few years ago now, I tore my ACL. And as a hyperactive kid, I used to always go running, hiking, biking, all that stuff, football, training. I was immobilized for bear time, and so I just needed something to vent, essentially. And one day at one of our old crew nights with the boys on a Friday night after school type thing, I was just like, yo, I'm gonna write a verse, and it all started with that. And at the time I was big into like 2 Chainz and like Rick Ross and that kind of style of music, and so my music reflected that at the time. And then, you know, as the years went by, I got into 2014 Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole, and like a song like '03 Adolescence. The storytelling on that track is like unparalleled in my opinion. Next to Nas type shit, you know? And so then my lyricism and writing style started to cater towards that more storytelling side. And then years later, we're progressing, and I discover an East Coast cat from New York called Capital Steez, who is preaching some bare philosophical shit in flows and rhyme schemes that nobody's ever heard in my life. And I'm like, yo, I aspire to be just like this guy, and bring a different approach to what he sees, because he's coming from a very different life that we live in here in the west coast of Canada type thing, in a smallish city town of Kelowna, you know? And so all the while in the hip hop genres that I do, that's kind of how my music progression has progressed, just listening to so many different rappers and like actually writing down their lyrics and like highlighting the rhyme schemes and figuring out like, oh, they're doing A, B here, but then they'll do a B, A here rhyme scheme type shit, and then they'll totally flip it, and then they'll do a bunch of different stuff, you know? So it's really just getting into the actual lyrics and the rhyme schemes.
Nice.
100%.
That studying of artists that have come before you and stuff like that, was that just did that just start out of like a natural interest in what they were doing, or was it like, yo, I want to be one of the greatest ever, and so I gotta like study the greatest ever?
It was absolutely a fiending for wanting to be as talented as a rapper as possible. Growing up on the west side, I was a very idealistic and dreamful kid, and so still am to this day. And at the time, I wanted to be one of the greatest rappers and hip hop artists that had ever lived. And what I did was I sampled the works of all the greats that I really actually enjoy listening to, and saw what they're doing and like what they might have been thinking in their approach to that. And it's like, what were you thinking when you incorporated this surface level meaning to one bar and then included the double entendre underneath type shit? You know what I'm saying? And so it really just kind of stemmed and evolved from just really wanting to be as lyrical and as substance-filled as possible.
Yeah. No, I relate to that, and from like a filmmaking perspective, and even like a business perspective, I would go onto YouTube and I would listen to like interviews of like successful people and people I admired, and then I'd have my notebook, and anytime I'd heard something more than once, you know, like the classical, just like, you know, hustle, like when you know, when they're sleeping, you should be working type shit. Like 100%. I'd hear that kind of stuff over and over again. I'd write it down in my book, and I'd just have this like knowledge kind of based notes that were all from some of the greatest people that have come before me. And so, studying that kind of shit, I think, is important. Absolutely. I feel like the beautiful part of that progression for me as an artist, and for you as a photographer, videographer, and all the other plethora of things that you do, and for everybody else and whatever they are passionate about, is, you know, we all kind of go through stages to where we are trying to be like somebody who we idolize, and so our work often reflects that person. And then over time, you're finding new people that you like and new people who are influencing you, and then you incorporate those styles, and then next thing you know, you're a well-oiled machine, and now you're creating shit like you are creating shit type thing. You know what I'm saying? And then it's like, eventually you'll get to the point to where, you know, people are going to be looking at you, you know, and be like, oh, wow, like this rhyme scheme here in one of Huey's verses is crazy, and also the substance matter is wild, and it's really got me thinking. It's time to go to work and do some research and study and type thing, you know? Yeah. I think it's super fascinating. You're going to have a group of people looking at you July 1st, no? 100%. I am performing on Canada Day on a houseboat party group thrown by the boys, the dear friends up at Knox Mountain Studios. Yeah, shout out Knox Studios. Shout out Knox Studios. You got Dylan up there, you got Sean, you got Travi, you got Corey. The whole unit is moving up there, and they have organized and put on 2 different shows on Canada Day. So me and my younger brother will be on from 3 to 6 p.m.,
And then there's a later one from 6 to 9 on Canada Day. It's going to be such a fantastic day. If you're looking for a link as far as getting tickets, the later one is already pretty well sold out, and the earlier one is getting to it. And so you can find that at the link in my bio on Instagram. It's Huey Doje, HUEYDOJE. And I have a link tree in there, and it'll be the top one. You can click it; it'll take you right to Eventbrite, and we can have a great time on Canada Day.
Hells yeah, I'll 100%. Be there, and all those links and Instagrams and stuff like that will be in the description down below. So check that shit out.
Love it.
How are you feeling about that? Like, I'm assuming your first performance back since this whole pandemic, and
yeah,
for me, even going as a guest, like I know. The plan is that kind of some of the restrictions are going to be loosened by then, and we're going to be allowed to do this thing. Mm-hmm. It's kind of weird knowing that I'm going to be on a boat, like shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people. You know what I'm
100%.
saying?
It's crazy. That's all like kind of progressing towards that slowly and slowly. I think it's going to be really cool. For me, it's dope because I haven't performed in front of a legitimate crowd since I was in Edmonton, like the winter immediately prior to COVID happening. And so me and a couple of my buddies, shout out to Chris, shout out to Sauce and Timo out there in E-Town representing U of A type shit on the ball team. We got a show and we got to perform, and it was just a cool little hole in the wall place right downtown E-Town. And it was super fun. We all performed a couple songs respectively, and then we had a couple collabs together, and it was just such a vibe. And then since then, I did a live stream for BNA in December. I think it was the 23rd.
Okay, weird. Yeah, I think I was there for that.
Yeah, so there was a couple people like there, but I had my headphones in and I was super focused. So it was like performing for myself.
Yeah.
But that was super great. That one turned out super awesome. But this is gonna be sweet because it's the first time actually performing in front of people since Bear Time. It really feels like, and it's gonna be a bit more of like a party hip hop scene. And as of recently, a lot of my music work and practices have been in actual musicianship, learning music theory, practicing like R&B, neo soul, and like jazzy kind of guitar stuff. So this is going to be a really good show to really dust off the rust, get back into the flow, and just really have a great time on Canada Day. We're going to get off the boat for us at 6 o'clock, and then we're going to be right downtown in the prime of things, Hopefully we get some nice weather and it'll be good vibes.
Totally, man. Well, I'm excited for you, bro, because I know you've put a lot of work into your craft over this whole pandemic and
100%.
just in general, but yeah, I'm excited to see you perform, and I can't wait, really, man.
Can't wait either.
Yeah. You mentioned that this party was going to be more of a hip hop kind of scene and vibe. What's that scene kind of like here in Kelowna for you? And is it growing? And do you think a hip hop artist can be supported and thrive in this town?
I think there are a couple variables to that. For me, I haven't necessarily identified solely as a hip hop artist for a little while now, just because for me, I find more joy out of actually like playing, orchestrating, writing, and producing like music with like instruments on stage and stuff. You got a lead singer, guitar, bass, drummer type thing. You're actually going as a unit. For me, I feel like there's absolutely a scene going on, but it's very much a niche sort of scene in terms of there are lots of people doing lots of things. Just across the road we have the Vault studio run by Austin and oh wow, I'm blanking on his
just
name.
That whole OK Collective crew.
OK Collective is just going up, and they're doing major stuff out there, and they've got lots of artists coming in and doing real work. And all those artists, I think, are like for the most part a little younger than me. I'm 23, so I've been out of high school for a few years now, and all those guys are still relatively fresh into the real world, so to speak. And so a lot of those guys have all their high school crews that are going to roll and mosh type of thing. For me, I didn't really get into music until after I was done high school. Like as far as taking it seriously as a performing artist. And so I really had to curate and cultivate my own scene. And quickly I realized for me that the people that I typically hang around with aren't going to hip hop shows, but they're going to music shows. So for me as a hip hop artist, I have no issue ever rapping at like in a feature on a track for a quick show like this type of thing. But as far as a pure hip hop scene, it's tough out in this town, you know. And like obviously, all of our perceptions are a little skewed just because there hasn't been much going on because of COVID, obviously.
Of course.
Even before that, though, like, you know, Meigs Ambrosio, like, fucking love that guy.
Shout out, yeah,
he was
Meigs.
throwing bear shows, and they're absolute bangers. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
dude.
saying? And so I feel like the key to the hip hop scene here is you really need, and it's the key for any scene, you need a couple people who are really spearheading the way and like actually doing the dirty work in terms of making the connections in the scene to then curate the actual culture itself. And I feel like Meigs is one of those dudes. And I feel like the boys at OK Collective are one of those dudes, and Kenny and Indy and all these guys, Cam and stuff, you know what I'm
Knox
saying?
Studios,
it's like
yeah.
Knox Studios, like they've got bear artists coming in and stuff. So there's definitely lots happening. As far as getting into it though, you really have to put your feet to the ground and do some work, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the connections and people, you know.
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. It's interesting from my perspective being in the scene for a bit, because I've just been in it as a photographer and music video director, and then obviously when I was doing the whole Rare Breed thing, kind of helping with planning shows and doing the vlogs and just promoting. And it's just, I find it fascinating because hip hop is such a popular genre, if not the most popular genre there is right now
100%.
in music. And yet the scene here is so like everybody in it is so passionate, but it just hasn't jumped off yet. Like there's no venues that are supporting full hip hop shows. And part of that reason is probably because like people like the rage and they get a little wild, and that's probably a little bit more risk to take on the venue side of things.
Absolutely.
But it feels like some people just aren't 100% willing to just jump into it totally as well. Like we don't really come from this place of where historically hip hop scenes and culture has grown and
We are
thrived
in the midst of a grassroots upbringing type shit. And I feel like, to what you were just saying, it really reflects in a pure contrast in the demographic of people in Kelowna.
Totally.
In terms of the people who own the venues are not the people raging at hip hop shows and even listening to hip hop type thing. So that's what I'm saying, to where you need the people spearheading it, the hip hop movement, to make the connections with those people, so that then their scene and culture can be incorporated type thing. Or you just need somebody with the money on that hip hop side to start their own place, and then you have an outlet for all these, like all the hip hop artists around town to do what they do type of thing.
Totally, yeah. We're going to take a quick break and listen from our sponsors, but I think on that note, when we get back, I want to talk to you about some of your lyrics and some of the messages that you put out in your music, and why I think that you're one of the people that should be getting put on in this city, and especially from that older demographic that's still around,
100%.
because you're going to be speaking to the younger generations, and you've got some positive influence in your music. So let's take a quick little break, and then we'll get back into that.
And cut.
There with a drop of vernacular potion. I'm seeking a mindful place. I'm seeking a vine. I'm feeling to find the space. A spiritual mind, an open eye. The third exists behind the face. It's there at all times. This is the key behind the dreams at night. Pretty like fall times. All that I see is what I perceive from light. The thought is ambiguous. Mindful fruit. I'm handpicking it. It's time to move.
Check. 1, 2, 1, 2. I could probably be a bit louder. I've only done 2 episodes, but I feel off without having my logo up there, man.
I'm sure you can edit and post type shit.
If I want to spend the time doing it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, my man, we are back. Yeah, like I said, I only have done 2 episodes, and usually I open up with some questions from the audience, but I know you pretty well. We've worked together on some music videos and stuff, and so I think this podcast would be better served with me just asking you some questions that I have.
Let's do it.
I think let's start off with maybe like what I'm fascinated by is like you're putting like some real knowledge and some positivity and some life lessons, and you have some pretty strong values and ideals, I'd say. Is that fair to say?
100%.
So when you're putting that into your music, like where does that confidence come from to be able to like kind of preach to people like that and be, for lack of a better term, like a teacher in a certain sense? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. In all honesty, a big part of that inspiration like comes solely from my my inspiration in capital Steez. Capital Steez, for those of you who don't know, is an East Coast rapper. He grew up in somewhere in the greater New York area, and he started both Pro Era, the group that is now famous for, housing Joey Badass and Nick Caution and Kirk Knight and all these dudes. And he also started the Beast Coast movement. And what I noticed, he unfortunately died in 2012, but his legacy still lives on to this day, and he didn't even reach nearly the stardom that he deserves, and you look at where Joey Badass is at right now. I believe that Capital Steez was a far more influential person, or could have been at least. And so I listened to his subject matter and his content matter, and I'm like, this stuff is so deep, and I've never even thought about it in this way. If I can find a way to say things like this in my own stylistic, unique way, but also have, some notable influences, like, a J. Cole storytelling type thing, or like Capital Steez with his just absolutely wild lyricism and all this stuff. And like, just all these different inspirations can lead towards a message that I hold true to my heart, and the opening verse that I spit, I have a line that goes, with no sacred knowledge about the lands that we live in, it's like we're children with no sense. I can see, hear, and smell, but it makes no sense. And that's in reference to all of the wrongdoings towards the indigenous populations in Canada specifically, because that's where we're from, but all over the world in reality. Things like just as recent as maybe 2 weeks ago, we found out about the 215 children that were found behind some residential school in Kamloops. And like, that's just one. Like this stuff is heartbreaking to think about. And we essentially, as not me personally, because my roots come to Canada at a far later age than colonial settlement. But if you think about all of the shit that went down to these people who were here far earlier than we were, who have far deeper knowledge about the land that we live in, it's like we're children with no sense. I can see, hear, and smell it, but it makes no sense. It's nonsensical. The damage from the hands and the actions of the man, reprehensible demands. This is coming from a man whose ancestral seed path is not Aborigine, but clearly I see past. All of the shit that's been brought forward and brought to light, especially in the modern age of mass media, to where we have so much access to so much information and so much shit, frankly, that happens in the world. And so, I'm really trying to, if nothing else, get you thinking about something that you weren't thinking about previously.
Yeah, man. No, that's some facts for sure.
100%.
And this is why a scenario that happened to you recently fucking upsets me, dude. And it's because, like, we just established that, one, hip-hop is one of the biggest, if not the most popular genre out now. And there, especially to young kids. You look at TikTok and shit, like, everything has got, like, a hip-hop beat. And
100%.
Right?
100%.
And then there's somebody like yourself who's a local, who's passionate, who's extremely talented, has some deep meaning lyricism, and it actually has, like, some truth and some facts that are going to help, make the future generations aware of what went down and how we can be better and stuff like that. And you had an opportunity to go and perform at a school, and they turned you down because your lyrics were too controversial,
too edgy. Opinion. Yeah. So allow me to provide some context. So for those of you who have seen episode 1 of the JPE, Brent Carmichael is a local entrepreneur. He's a musician. He's a phenomenal dude all in all. And he reached out to me as far as doing a project that he was working on for, was it Rutland Senior Secondary, or it was one of the schools around town here. And he works with a lot of the kids, and he wanted to do a music video project about inclusivity and spreading a positive message to the youth. And so my mind instantly started turning, and I was like, if I got to sit in a room full of high school kids and I had the microphone and I had to tell them some stuff, what would I actually tell them? And so then I started writing. And to give some context, the verse was, Huey, Doje on track and spit a fact about youth. We really hating this heavy dictation and all our moves. Sometimes I need the space to make mistakes, the right to choose, the right to look back and learn fast when I'm recluse. We've fallen out of touch with each other, but fall in line to the system. The youth can be the change is my prediction. Grounding condition and heavy friction. Soulfully rich when we reach a peace existence. Hold on. Now it's our time to shine. Lighthouse until minorities are major in the White House. Call it house of colors and vast numbers, inclusive to all times. Cosmic life house on this mother earth ship through another earth spin. Her into the essence of time is what to worship. But the worst is mass human disturbance. Trying to navigate through COVID government coercion. Be like you. And all of that I said, we've fallen out of touch with each other, but fall in line to the system is so blatantly obvious in this day and age, to where there, like, for example, in politics, there's a left and there's a right. And especially nowadays, there's far less people in the middle. And the left is always battling the right and vice versa, you know? And that is to a T exactly falling out of touch with each other, but falling in line to the system in terms of we're all just now basically just oil that keeps the system going type shit. And it starts from a young age, you know? It's like, how outdated is our education system? Greatly. It's so apparent in North America, you know?
Yeah.
Our education system is so bad. So many kids don't really care because 90% of the shit that you learn in school is non-applicable to real life. But the real life things that everybody needs to know, like time management, filing taxes, making a proper resume, you know, presenting yourself and communicating clearly, being able to express vulnerability in the right circumstances are all things that we have to jump off the deep end and just fucking learn. But they're going to teach us calculus and physics, and they're going to teach us biology. Not to say any of that stuff is not important, because I absolutely love science, you know? Astronomy is like, space is my favorite thing to think about. Quantum mechanics is so fascinating. The vastness of all biology is incredibly interesting. But none of that matters if we're not in a place to where we can actually live out our lives in a harmonious way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so they heard the verse and they thought it was far too edgy for the children to listen to, which is all furthermore evidence of basically what I'm saying, you know? It's like, we're not gonna give these children an opportunity to think for themselves, make their own decisions, and just think deeper about things, you know?
That's what blew my mind, is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but your overall message with that verse was essentially, you know, be kinder to each other and think for yourself.
100%.
And like, that's what's always preached throughout school and shit like that. But when it comes to, you know, walking the walk, they're not doing it because they're scared to change. People want to keep their jobs. They don't want to get in trouble from their superior. And it's just, it's unfortunate. I was a big, like, I don't know what you call them. I was just like a school nerd for the longest time growing up. Like, I'd always make sure that my tests were done on time and my schoolwork was done on time and blah, blah, blah. And I would get so stressed out about all this stuff.
100%.
And then I just started like, looking around at my friends and families and people that were older than me. And I was like, does this, any of this actually apply to me beyond these next 4 years? And
unless you're going to post-secondary.
Right. And that's not to say like you said, like obviously biology, physics, math, English, whatever subject it may be that's taught in school, they're important and they should be taught. But there's so many other things that aren't being taught, and the education system needs to be changed. And it's furthermore actually an example of that is just when kids go off to go into post-secondary and into universities and stuff like that.
None of them, they're all fucking off and doing crazy shit.
Bro, they're all doing crazy shit. They're all, and on top of that,
no
they're taking out...
No disrespect to all of you kids in school and all of you people in school who are actually grinding. My girlfriend is a 10-year post-secondary student. I have no issue with going to school. My issue is going to school when there's nothing that's going to come out of it except for your student loan debt.
Well, and that's what I was getting to, is that there's then the student loans that people just can't afford to pay off. They've
100%.
never been taught how to do proper finances. You know, I'm guilty in these scenarios as well, and learning on the fly. But it's just like, man, I was complaining about this in grade 9. Like, why isn't anybody teaching me about taxes?
Yes,
and as like a grade 9-year-old, like, or a grade 9 student, like how can I realize that and keep saying that and nothing's changing and nothing's getting better? And so I don't know, it blows my mind when I heard that story. It made me a little angry because I was just like, this is bullshit, man. Like you'd speak clearer to those kids than any of their teachers probably would.
That's exactly what I'm saying. And it's like, at the end of the day, that project, unfortunately, due to some COVID stuff, has not happened yet. But even if it did happen, and if I still were to miss it out, like, I'm not upset because it just proves exactly my point that I'm saying. You know, it's like we're just basically being indoctrinated to be a specific way.
Yeah. I agree. How did you come across these lessons? You said that you looked into Buddhism and Taoism, and I'll let you further expand on some of your beliefs and whatnot. But how did you come to these conclusions?
Well, as far as most of the stuff that we were just covering, I've been thinking a lot of this stuff since bear time. Like, you can ask my mother, like, I've been critical of the education system since I was still a part of the education system.
Do you like to argue? Are you good? Do you enjoy a good debate?
Yeah, I pick and choose my times.
Because growing up, I loved to debate, man. I would argue about anything. And
with my mother, especially growing up before I knew any better, we would go back and forth into it all the time. I love you, Mama. I hope you're watching this. We would go back and forth all the time about so many things, and like a lot of it was just super trivial because I was just a young boy who didn't know anything. You know what I'm saying? Now, though, it's like I try to not argue just because there's no point in having an argument if you can have a conversation. And I feel like an argument and a conversation are very different things. I feel like you can have very passionate conversations that resemble arguments, but there's still a very clear distinction. And so I feel like if a conversation is getting to the point of an argument, I'll try my very best to just not even indulge because it's just not even worth it. You know, it's like an argument, I feel like, for many situations just really gets you nowhere except more upset. You know, as far as debates and stuff, I love debating, you know? It's like if somebody were to sit across from me at this table and tell me the modern education system is the best thing since Jesus, like, I would be open to a debate.
Yeah,
you know?
You'd be like, damn, I want to hear your perspective.
100%. As soon as we get contentious, though, nah, I'm out.
Fair.
You know?
Fair. 100%. And is that part of the meditative kind of practices that you do and the Buddhism and Taoism and etc.?
I guess indirectly. I don't even think about it in that context. For me, a lot of my philosophical studies really stem down to reading into the history of people who have already changed the world. As somebody who wants to change the world myself for the better, you know? In terms of Confucianism to this day is still, although considered a religion, it's a philosophy. It's still the most prominent philosophy in China, and followed by Taoism and Buddhism, and obviously depending on who you ask, those three are going to be put in different orders, type of thing. I have recently been reading some of the work of Confucius in terms of his philosophy on how you should be as a person, as a member of society, and that book. It's like, I can't remember exactly what it's called. I have a lot of philosophy books now, but if you can get your hands on some works of Confucius, there's a lot of stuff in that they were writing thousands of years ago that are still applicable today and still reflect the fuckery of this system and world that we live in. Taoism is a little more so of the mystical and of the soul. And so a mix and mash between both Taoism and Confucianism really gives you a whole broadened philosophy in terms of how to be a part of a society, and then how to... I would really be lying if I said I knew anything about Taoism, because one of the essential qualities of Taoism is the Tao that can be explained is not the eternal Tao, or the Tao. Taoism, both the same thing. And so really I would just suggest that if you're looking to expand your mind and you're looking to try to develop as a human and better yourself to eventually better the next generation and that generation's generation and so on and so forth, Confucianism and Taoism are two great places to start. The Tao Te Ching in Taoism is the original, and the Confucian Analects is the Confucianism one.
Yeah, and this goes back to some of what we were speaking about earlier with the atrocities that happened to indigenous cultures before us.
Yeah.
Is that there were so many philosophies and lessons and stuff that have been lost throughout history.
I know,
you know,
with no sacred knowledge about the lands that we live in. It's like we're children with no sense. I can see, hear, and smell, but it makes no sense. That's what I'm saying, my guy.
Dude,
you know,
it's like it's sad.
We, you know, when I say we, I'm not speaking us in terms of the vast majority of people of our generation, but our lineage is essentially a lineage of genocide against Aboriginal people, you know? And it's like, I've had a debate with lots of people who I deeply care about in terms of like, oh yeah, like indigenous people receive so much money from the government. What makes you think they want our form of money in our system when they had their own form of value and exchange and they had their own systems and we forced them to live under our systems type of thing. So it's like, it's ultimately twisted in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I agree. And there's actually a really good documentary called The History of Us here in Canada. And it goes into how we came to be, who we are and stuff like that. And there's stories of obviously there was one indigenous group. I can't remember the exact area that they were in, but like they made a deal with the French to get weapons and stuff like that and have access over the trade routes. And so, but there's also crazy stuff like, there was one indigenous leader based out of like the Vancouver area, I believe. And he learned Spanish and he learned English all on his own at the age of like 21 or 22 so that he could strike a deal between Spain and England on the selling of sea otter pelts.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and he was like 21 or 22 at the time, the chief, and many people look back to that moment as some of the first practices of actual like business conversations and deals that we now replicate further in today's society. And even going back to one of those indigenous bands that was fighting over that trade route, was a group of indigenous tribes. And the founding fathers in America used that as one of their examples when they came together and created the Constitution. So there's so many lessons and things that we've learned from these people who have come before us, and just historically we've committed genocide and fucked them over. And it's sad. It's sad.
I feel like the unfortunate reality about the lives of indigenous people worldwide is because of their essentially life philosophy and their minimalistic practices, so to speak, and within reason, has been exploited by people who relatively look like us, who were far more idealistic and they wanted the world for themselves and were not ready to consider the lives of other people. And it's ultimately saddening, it's like you think of things like the conquest of Mexico, although that group of people living in Mexico at the time were incredibly savage. You had a couple boats of Spanish people came and slaughtered like millions of people.
Yeah, which is more savage at the end of the day.
I know, it's absolutely wild. And now Mexico is a Spanish-speaking country. Yeah. And this is me speaking from like my mother's entire lineage is of Spain and Argentina type of thing. And so like that's directly a part of me. And my grandfather comes from China, and like there's so many messed up things that have happened in China as well, All this to say, it's like I feel like this almost boils down to a totally different topic in terms of, for example, UFOs. Do they think we're interesting or not? I think we're fascinating because we're incredibly twisted.
Yes.
And for example, like an alien race that's coming here and observing us, theoretically, if they see all the things we do and the way we live, I would feel like that would be absolutely fascinating because it's like, wow, these people really don't give a fuck.
Oh, dude, we got people studying like fucking ant colonies and stuff like that. So who's exactly. And I'm down to get into that stuff because I love the conversation about UFOs and aliens. I just want to touch on real quickly, just the creation of like I don't know the exact term that I want to use, but the creation of like the other, like they're not me, like almost dehumanizing people. And I think that comment about like the savages and stuff like that was a common term used against indigenous people throughout history, and which is crazy because just like they're just human, and then you have like these empires that are going through and just like raping and pillaging and fucking everybody up. So who really was the true savages? Well, at the end of the day, that was just a term used to fucking dehumanize people. Yeah, we're all human, we're all savage, and I don't know, man. I find that same kind of practice is happening today on a mass scale, where there's just like the dehumanization of people that don't look or think the same way as you, and it's weird, man. I think we got to move away from that shit.
I think it all boils down to, and me and my girlfriend have had deep conversations about this. Shout out V, love you, baby. It boils down to, in my mind, a fundamental lack of knowledge,
and like fear of the other, also, kind of thing, right?
Which, in a sense, like stems from a lack of knowledge. You know, you're fearful of things that we don't know what happens to us after we die. Therefore, we fear death. You know, we don't know. You could make so many lists with that type of thing. I feel like somebody who looks at somebody of a different pigmentation or skin color or shape or sizes them and views them as different than themselves fundamentally has no idea of the ultimate nature of all things. And in my mind, I believe that although we exist in different manifestations, you, for example, have a fuller beard than I do and my skin's a little darker than yours, we're all made up of subatomic particles, and the different arrangements of those particles creates the hardness of this table and the complexion of the darkness of it. It creates everything that is inside of me and the metal wiring that create this microphone right here. You know what I'm saying? People aren't thinking like this though, and so they see something different and outside of their own knowledge, and they become fearful. And I feel like, in all honesty, in terms of the black person play in America versus the white person play in America, I feel like there's and in terms of racism, I feel like because there's been such a history of racism against black people in America, now white people are fearful that, and let's face facts, black people are incredibly talented, incredibly beautiful. They're just amazing people to have around, but the white folk who don't want them around, I feel like, especially nowadays, are now fearful of the retribution that could be had on them as a result of what their lineage had done to these folk. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's just tribalism, like anything, man. It's
tribalism is a motherfucker.
Yeah, people just get split up, and you know, they just start holding their ideas too closely to their chest, and they're not open-minded. And it's just tribalism. It's the same as the left versus right example that we made earlier, you know, and just viewing the other side as the other and not as one and the same. And yeah, we got to move away from that, man. Like I don't think half of the political conversations that are happening nowadays are in any way, shape, or form beneficial. I think they just keep adding to the divide.
Well, like, even to add on to that, it's like I remember I watched with my mom when the Canadian election was happening. What was that, like a year or two ago or so? I had to stop watching after 10 minutes. I'm like, these people are children arguing about nonsense.
Oh, bro, I know.
You know, it's like you're cutting people off. Like, you're not having an insightful conversation. And the platform at which the conversation is being had is ultimately flawed, in which you're only given 60 seconds to express your thoughts.
It's ridiculous.
It makes no sense. And that's how we're going to choose to elect our officials in government?
Bro, I know.
That makes no sense.
I know. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Trudeau by any means, but like, there was that that conservative guy, Andrew, I can't remember his name, Scheer. But
yeah,
dude, his whole he didn't even release his platform.
Oh, I know. He just
kept saying, "I'm not Trudeau."
I know.
And that was his only thing. And I was like, "What the how?" And
this is child's play.
It's child's play, man. It's bullshit. And I don't get it. It's like you have to be a certain type of person maybe to get to that level, and you have to stay in line and follow the party lines and not sway outside of it. And maybe that's why free thinkers never get to the top.
Ain't that the truth?
But yeah, there's clearly needs to be something different. Well, Gonna hear from our quick sponsors if they're still down to sponsor us after that conversation.
We're gonna know who's real and who ain't after this one.
Straight up. And then we'll get back to it. Maybe talk about UFOs and aliens and
Respect.
Down on the move, yeah. Hold up, wait, ooh. The frequencies in tune, yeah. Hold up, wait, ooh. The incentives to move, yeah. Hold up, wait, ooh. This is a vibe, style and grooving, yeah. Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Are you just gonna start going off?
I wish I could fucking do this and rap at the same time, but I lose it.
Fair, man. All right, we're back. We can get into some UFOs and some conversation about your music and stuff like that, and some more of your shows coming up. But just really quick, I've used this third segment to kind of just get some relationship advice from people. People can go back to episode 1 and 2 if they want to hear my whole explanation. But just to give a quick summary, I think community is extremely important in a time where we're supposed to be the most connected we've ever been. I feel like we're the least connected we've ever been. And in one way that I think everybody can relate to that is when discussing relationships and what that's like in 2021. Also, relationships advice pops off on YouTube. So
Classic.
Good little-
Clearly, we've fallen out of touch with each other.
so I want to put that shit in there so I can start popping off and blowing up.
100%.
But yeah, man, I mean, maybe what's it like for you dating and playing the whole relationship game in 2021?
Yeah, well, as far as advice, I probably wouldn't be the one to give advice, but I can talk about my own situation. And so I have my lovely lady, Victoria Bass. I love you so much. And we have been dating all through COVID, and so our entire relationship has existed as a product of a COVID relationship type thing. And one thing that I personally really identified that I needed in a partner, and I also wanted to evolve into, was a more expressive communicator of how I'm feeling, what my needs are, and actually like expressing myself in the moments when I'm feeling something type of thing. And so as some, like for example, my dad, I would say, was not the most expressive person, and I have no blame for him whatsoever because he came from a father who was not very expressive, and I'm sure he came from a father who was not very expressive. And I feel like that's the case for a lot of us young dudes out here, you know? Not even just dudes, a lot of men, women, and everybody, you know?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally men have been kind of told to keep their emotions to themselves.
100%.
And yeah, that's kind of a new thing that's been changing.
And I feel like you definitely need to know the difference and you need to know when to be vulnerable. You need to know when to express yourself, and you also need to know when you have to be the rock.
Yeah,
you know. And my favorite thing about my relationship is how open we both are to explaining how we're feeling and what we're thinking, and like if we're in a shitty mood or if we're not happy about something, we'll talk about it. And it's interesting because it's like, I would say me and V have never really had like a proper argument to where we're actually fighting, but we've had, just like anybody, we've had times to where it's turbulent and it needs to be sorted out. But instead of running and not speaking through it, which is what a younger me would have done, we opened the dialogue, said the hard things that needed to be said, and took that leap of faith, which takes a lot of courage. And on the other side is every single time, it's always been the most bliss form of love, in my opinion, in terms of like, we're both more connected than we were before. We're both more in love with each other than we were before. And we both understand each other better than we did before.
Yeah. See, I think all these things apply to what we were talking about and stuff earlier, and it's open communication is so important, and it's just not happening nearly as much.
Right.
Especially in like the dating world, like leading, like, you know, half the time, at least for me, maybe it's just me at the end of the day, but half the time it's just like, yo, what are we right now? You know? And then all of a sudden that question is almost like popping the question of like, are we getting married? It's like, no, chill. Like I'm just trying to figure out if like you're seeing other people or what's the deal here, 100%, you know?
100%.
And I think that, yet again, that kind of stuff is just bleeding throughout our society. There's just a lack of open communication and understanding of one another.
Which I feel like, as I was saying before, boils down to It takes a lot of courage to speak your absolute truth, especially when it's somebody who you want to see you in the best light, you know? When you're super attracted to somebody, I feel like it's easy to manipulate and make yourself seem one way when you're actually another sort of thing. And I feel like it's super, super important, especially for a functional, healthy relationship. Like, I personally, like, I'm a simple dude. I like having my lady. I like going home. We like to watch Naruto, and we like to chill. We'll go on hikes. We'll go camping. I like it simple. But it all boils down to we wouldn't have been able to get there if we didn't express, like, what we needed and what we wanted out of each other. And as a result, I feel like we're both absolutely satisfied to the maximum. We're both absolutely in love, and I can see myself beside nobody else. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's the most beautiful thing.
Totally.
But it takes so much courage to step into a relationship, for example, and say, hey, I'm super into you. I don't want you to be seeing anybody else. And if that is what you want, then unfortunately I have to be willing to accept that. And that taking that step takes courage. But on the other side of that courage typically is what you want. Mm-hmm. On the other side of not going there is pretty much always going to result to some sort of pain. And obviously there's exceptions to all things.
Yeah.
You know, courage is so, so, so important. And even myself, it's like when I'm frustrated, I tend to recluse, and I don't want to speak words, and I can't even think clearly because my mind is spinning on a million different things. And so it's still taken me time, and it will continue to take me time for the rest of my days to evolve to where it's just continuous courage. And courage leads to pain sometimes, but we have to not be afraid to take that leap in terms of speaking what you need. And this is so much more broad than just relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
This can apply to the
That's
workplace.
my whole point at the end of the day.
This can apply to your own dreams. This can apply to your children. This can apply to friends and family. It's so, like, as far as relationships, it can be so much bigger than just a love relationship. It can be relationships with all things.
How much does love and that kind of stuff play a part in your music?
Oh, well, in hip-hop, none at all, because I like to speak on, like, strictly the factual side of things and the lyricism, and it's just far easier for me to think of not, like, necessarily love stuff, because I feel like love topics in rap kind of have to, they have to be to a specific sonic style. So in hip-hop, none at all. In my musicianship, 100%. With the exception of maybe a couple songs, almost every single song that I've written on the guitar is about a love interest. It's about my relationship. It's about even family sometimes, you know. But predominantly it's about my lady.
It's funny because to me that feels almost like the feeling you associate with, like, the sound, like something like hip hop that and rapping. Like, you clearly have a feeling of like protest and whatnot, and so
absolutely
you put that out through your hip hop and rap music. But then, like, with the musical side, you know, with the guitar and the way it sounds, you clearly have more of a feeling of maybe more peace and love 100%. And stuff like that coming from that avenue.
Well, and, like, just to kind of, like, speak some facts about music theory, it's like hip-hop often takes that kind of sonic approach to where it's like it's a headbanger, you're nodding, it gets you thinking about, like, some revolutionary shit. For me personally,
that's how it started.
100%.
Really, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The roots are exactly that.
Yeah.
Whereas on the musician side, for myself, like, for example, let's just take the key of C. If I do a 2-5-1 in the key of C, I do major 7, so D minor 7 for the 2, a G dominant 7 for the 5, and a C major 7. That's a super, super soulful sound.
I have no idea. You just spoke.
And
absolute.
I understand
a whole nother language.
And one day when I'm actually performing this stuff that I've been working on for the last year or two, it'll all make sense because I have a song that uses that exact chord progression.
Okay.
And it just, like, brings a different sort of soul and feeling. You're not going to rap about revolutionary shit on some shit that's like, let's wind down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just different, you know?
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
Well, I think real quick, let's just get into some UFOs and aliens and shit, man.
Man, they're here.
They're here, bro.
They're here.
I've been dying to talk about this on the podcast, and when you brought it up, I was like, boom, let's chat.
I absolutely am so fascinated by aliens. Like one of my favorite movies of all time, I think it's called Arrival.
Yeah, I love Arrival.
Where like they go up into that chamber and they're like those weird squid sort of things, and like that movie like was so profound to me, and I mean it doesn't really have anything to do with like actual aliens or anything, but like I boil it down to this. Assuming the universe is not a simulation and everything that we see out there through our telescopes are all actually there, the amount of stars in this galaxy and the amount of planets that accompany those stars is incomprehensible, and that's one goddamn galaxy. And then there's an incomprehensible amount of galaxies in the observable known universe. Look at the progression that we have had in, let's say, since the 90s. You think if you brought a Tesla, like a new Tesla, like I saw somebody driving one of the new Tesla Roadsters, I was like, oh my God, that thing is incredible. And if you brought that to the 90s in like, you know, New York or something like that, they'd be like, what on earth is this? Is this alien technology? Bring like this iPhone XR, I just got this like a week and a half ago. If I brought this back to the 1600s, to the days of Newton, he'd be like, what on earth?
Yeah, you'd be a wizard to them.
You would literally be a
witch.
wizard. All this to say, if some alien race somehow has found a way to warp the fabric of space-time itself and thus travel vast distances without having to traverse through the actual distance and dimension of time itself, and they could cut straight through like you would folding a pencil and stabbing it through.
That's a classic example, yeah.
Exactly. Relativity theory, folks. Hashtag Einstein. If they have a million more years of evolution, like a million years in the scheme of the timeline of Earth is tiny.
Yeah.
It's tiny. For us, it's immense.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how long we've been around as human beings, at least anatomically modern human beings, but I can tell you it's not that long in the grand scheme of things.
I read this earlier yesterday, I think it was. We're over 300,000 years, but recorded history is only 2% of that.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just our recorded history is just a blip in actual human history, and yeah, that's 300,000 plus years.
Well,
so if we're talking about a race that's a million plus years ahead of us,
right,
we're
exactly.
a blink of an eye.
100%. Especially if they found a way to hack and maneuver through their biological like life ticker essentially in aging for us. If they find a way to ascend past that, what is it traveling 1,000 years from galaxy to galaxy? Nothing.
Well, and let's bring it back to establish some kind of ground thoughts and opinions here, so people don't think that we're totally fucking insane while they're listening to us.
Too far gone, bro. Let's
too
do
far
it.
gone, bro. Just accept it. I think in the news right now, recently, people have been discussing UFOs. They're now being referred to as UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And the Pentagon and the military have been releasing footage of things in the sky flying around, defying the laws of physics as we know it. They have no propulsion system that we can see, so it's not like, you know, a jet going across the sky with an exhaust and you know, all that coming out the back. These things are moving at speeds and angles and everything, and even going as far as some people are going into the water. And without a splash.
Transmedium
vehicles. And this has been confirmed by the Pentagon. They have footage of this. There's plenty of skeptics out there. Like one is Mick West, who's
I think I've heard of him,
yeah, but he's like a professional skeptic. Like his whole job is to be skeptical of everything. So it's like, okay, like how seriously can I mean, listen to him. Like that's my favorite part about free open conversation is listen to him, take that information, but then make your own opinion based on all the facts that you have in front of you. And so the facts are is that there are these unidentified flying objects in the sky. We don't know what they are.
100%.
it seems like it would almost be impossible for it to be another country like China or Russia, or maybe some black market program that the United States or Canada has. So that's where the whole kind of theory of aliens comes into play, is like, are these extraterrestrial vehicles? And if so, where are they from? The most recent theory that I've found interesting is that it's actually humans from the future.
Oh yeah, that's a common one. I love that. I love thinking about that because it's such a mindfuck. It really gets you twisted.
All of it's just a mindfuck in general, man. And like, I've have a public video that I actually just figured out has almost 1 million views on
I forgot you had that. You're all over Castanet and shit.
I was on Castanet, Clone
It's
Now.
like, what are these lights?
A big ginger from the radio station called me, and he was just trying to make fun of me the whole time.
Amazing. Classic.
I got contacted by the airport and stuff like that.
What?
Like, yeah, it could have just been like a manager there who was just obsessed with unidentified.
UFOs,
And he was just asking questions. But he asked me a bunch of questions of like what time of day, like what direction, blah 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 blah. And I'll post that video link down below.
I wonder
for
if
people
he
that
was
wanna see
asking
it,
you that because they also saw it on their radar and couldn't explain it.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. All I know is that I have a video of 8 or like how many are there? I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think 8 I counted. Silver orbs just like moving around in the sky, like midday.
You've heard of Commander David Fravor's Tic Tac story?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure it's that.
Yeah, maybe, dude. I have no idea. And I wasn't into UFOs and aliens at all until I saw that. But when I was seeing with my own eyes, I literally couldn't explain. And so I don't know. I'm not saying that it's aliens. I'm not saying that it's even necessarily an unidentified flying objects. I'm just saying nobody's been able to prove that it ain't.
Yeah, pretty much. I feel like the colossal mystery behind this is the fact that there is no visible propulsion system, which blatantly violates our known laws of physics.
Correct.
And so if these things are really out there, either they're operating under a different order of physics, or who even really knows? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But if a massive mothership floated over New York City tomorrow, I would not be surprised, and I would say, told you so.
Dude, totally, bro. I don't get why more people don't find it interesting. It's almost like it's so hard for them to comprehend, and they've thought of it as just a total conspiracy theory, and you're a wacko nut job if you talk about it, that yeah, it's just almost getting completely ignored.
Because we've been indoctrinated to believe that it is crazy.
I guess,
exactly
man.
why.
Yeah, that's what we've been told this whole time. So it's interesting, man. I mean, I think July 18th, I read, was when their most recent report from the Pentagon is going to come out, where the military releases pretty much everything they have.
Yeah.
That's who's to say that they actually do release everything, you know? But
I feel like with that, they're not going to tell us anything more than we already know.
Yeah.
They're going to say something along the lines of, we have confirmed that these things are there, but we cannot confirm what they are.
That's what they've already done. That's what came out.
I feel like
in
they're going to
early
extend
June.
that, though.
Yeah.
That being said, if they actually say, yo, we have no idea what these are, it must be aliens, I would be like, cool.
Yeah. I think their most recent one was that we have confirmed that they are there. We can't confirm that they aren't aliens or they are aliens or extraterrestrial, right? But
100%.
It's interesting, man. Even just watching like popular figures in the media and like past presidents now come out and give legitimacy to it, man.
There's some crazy shit going on.
Yeah, like Obama, Clinton, and I think even Trump have all said that like there's basically UAPs or UFOs and we just don't know what they are.
Oh yeah,
It's fucking wild.
honestly. I just hope that they are here as bearers of knowledge and civilization and not as a reflection of exactly what we are, which is tyrants of destruction.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I obviously have no way of proving this. This is just a personal theory, but I think that they've probably been here before and they seeded us. That's like, because I think if you go back in the human DNA, I could be just completely talking out of my ass here. I don't have a young Jamie that can pull this up on the screen. Yeah.
Right. Not yet, at least.
Not yet. So I could be just completely talking bullshit here. So don't believe anything I say. Go do the research yourself. But I think if you go far back in time in human history and their DNA structure, there's a point where it splits off and there's like a DNA like there's some form of DNA that we can't explain. Like it's not like we don't have any reference for what it could be. So who knows? Maybe that's the aliens.
I feel like human, what would be the proper word? Human propagation is definitely a far out there theory, although in this universe, I feel like pretty much anything is within the realm of possibilities, so long as our minds can conceive of it, and even if we can't, you know. So I could buy it.
Yeah, who knows? I obviously, that's not a sword I'm willing to die on. But it's a personal, like, okay, maybe that's what it is.
100%.
Any songs coming out and music videos about aliens and shit anytime soon? Or?
Definitely not aliens, no. At the moment, I'm really just working on fine-tuning my skills on the guitar and becoming as fluent as in music theory as possible, at least in an applicable way. Recently, I had a little studio in my bedroom, but we had a couple complications, so I haven't been able to do much recording or producing. So all of my focus as of late has really just been becoming more proficient as a musician. Oh, that's a bar. Becoming more proficient as a musician.
It's recorded, so you can go back and reference it if you need.
Love it. And really just getting ready for the day to where the time comes to where it's actually time to perform the music that I feel in my soul. I get to perform it, and which is the stuff that I've been practicing. You know, hip hop is super fun. I feel like rap is the best way to get across a vast message, but for me, the vibe is in musicianship.
Hells yeah.
Yeah.
Dope, dude. Well, I was excited to have you on, man. I really wanted to promote your show that was coming up July 1st.
Big blast.
It's going to be through Knox Studio out in the houseboat.
Yeah, Knox
from
Studio.
3 to 6.
I'm on from 3 to 6. We'll probably start boarding at like 2:30. It is a ticketed event, so if you're interested in having a good time on the afternoon of Canada Day, feel free to hit me up in my DMs on Instagram at Huey Doje, HUEYDOJE, all one word, all lowercase. And alternatively, I have the link in my bio, as well as we're going to do the link in the description below.
Hells yeah, man.
Hells yeah,
I appreciate
man.
it, dude. And this, I wanted to have Huey on just to promote the show and his music. And he's been a good friend of mine, and we've collaborated on music videos together. But I also knew that we'd be able to branch out a little bit and talk about some wild shit.
We talk about all sorts of stuff. Shout out to JP with the JPE experience. If you have not seen our music video that we worked on together in, I guess, the spring, maybe even the winter time.
It's still pretty cold out there.
Yeah, it was still chilly.
Yeah.
Go check it out. It's on YouTube. It's called Wait a Minute. If you search up Wait a Minute by Huey Doje, it'll be the first thing that pops up. And that all was shot by the man right here and recorded by myself in my bedroom.
Yeah, and Noah Dorsey, cinematographer on that one as well.
Yeah.
And one of my main collaborators
Shouts
in
out
the video world.
JP, Noah Dorsey, Dan the Man, Tamsin on set design, Jaden Reed,
Aiden
Feds, B&A Brewing for letting us shoot in the tasting room. Shouts out to all the free thinkers and dreamers out there. Let's continue to work together as far as creating a world that our children's children would love to see. And that is a dream of mine.
Let's go, man. Well, you're on the right path, brother.
Yeah, buddy.
All right. Thanks, people.
Bless, dog.
Catch you on the next one.
Peace.
Yeah, we rollin' dope, the flow's emotions, roller coaster motion. A word of spectacular notion, there were the drop of